It was a blistering Saturday morning when I decided to tend to my hydrangeas, armed only with a garden hose, a pair of shorts, and a sleeveless undershirt. The sprinkler system had been unreliable lately, so I was manually giving my plants the water they craved. The sun pressed down hard, sweat tracing lines across my back, but to me this was serenity, a quiet weekend ritual on my own property. That peace shattered the moment a voice like nails on glass sliced through the air. "Excuse me. Excuse me. What do you think you're doing?" I didn't need to turn my head to know who it was. Karen Wilcox, our HOA president and self-proclaimed neighborhood enforcer, was striding across my lawn with a manila folder clutched like a weapon. "This is completely inappropriate," she barked, jabbing the folder toward me. "Cover yourself up immediately." I blinked at her, hose in hand, stunned not only by her intrusion but by the sheer audacity of it. "I'm on my own lawn, Karen," I said evenly, making sure to use her name. "You're trespassing. Leave." Her face tightened, turning red at the edges. "I will not. As HOA president, I have every right to enforce community standards, and you are in violation." Little did she know this encounter was about to change everything, not just for her but for the entire neighborhood. Within 20 minutes, it was Karen, not me, being escorted off my lawn in handcuffs by two weary-looking police officers who seemed all too familiar with her antics. When I first moved into Oakwood Estates 3 years ago, it seemed idyllic. Manicured lawns, a sparkling community pool, and HOA fees that were reasonable for what we got. Back then, the board was relaxed, mostly concerned with maintenance and the annual block party. Then came Karen Wilcox. 6 months ago, she bulldozed her way into the presidency with promises to restore standards. From day one, she made it clear that she didn't see her role as service. It was a throne, and we were her subjects. She started small. Notices for grass a half-inch too tall, fines for trash bins left out a little too long. Soon, she was stalking the sidewalks with a clipboard, inventing violations that weren't even in the bylaws. I drew her ire after refusing to join her so-called Neighborhood Beautification Committee, which was really just a gossip club for her allies. From then on, I could feel her eyes on me from across the street. She'd glare whenever I stepped outside in my usual summer attire. Funny thing, it never bothered her when her husband mowed shirtless, but apparently my undershirt was a mortal threat to property values. At first, I brushed off her muttered digs. "Some of us believe in dressing appropriately," she'd say just loud enough for me to hear. Or, "It's a shame when people can't respect the community's image." But that morning she escalated. Karen stormed across the street, folder in hand, and without hesitation marched right up onto my lawn. "Your attire," she spat, as if the word itself disgusted her, "is dragging down property values and setting a terrible example for the children in this neighborhood. The HOA has standards, Jacob, and you will comply." Kept my voice calm. "Karen, I've read the bylaws. There's nothing about clothing on private property." That's when she pulled out her phone and began filming me like she was documenting a crime scene. "I'm recording this violation. This will be presented at the next board meeting when we vote on the dress code amendment I've proposed." My patience snapped. "Karen, you're trespassing, and you're recording me without consent. Leave. Now." She didn't budge. In fact, she stepped further onto my lawn. "I have every right to be here as HOA president. Section 4. Paragraph 2 grants board members access for inspections." What she didn't know was that I had a background in paralegal work. I knew the bylaws inside out. "That clause applies only to common areas and scheduled inspections with prior notice," I countered. "It doesn't give you the right to storm into someone's yard uninvited." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Or what? Are you going to call the police on me? Do you know who my husband is?" "He's a personal friend of the police chief." And that right there was the turning point. I slipped my phone from my pocket, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, Karen. That's exactly what I'm going to do." Her eyes widened as I hit record, then tapped 911. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. But the dispatcher's voice cut through her bravado. 911, what's your emergency? Hello, I said calmly, never breaking eye contact with Karen, whose face was flushing between crimson and purple. I have someone trespassing on my property, refusing to leave after multiple requests. Karen threw her arms wide, yelling loud enough for the dispatcher to hear. Go ahead. Tell them I'm the HOA president, enforcing community standards against an indecent homeowner. Sir, do you feel threatened? The dispatcher asked. Yes, I replied without hesitation. She's aggressive, confrontational, and refusing to leave. Officers are on their way. Please try to disengage until they arrive, came the calm instruction. But Karen wasn't about to disengage. She dug her heels into my lawn and kept filming, still ranting about community values and children being corrupted by my sleeveless undershirt. I stood my ground, hose in one hand, phone in the other, recording every second. 10 minutes later, the cruiser pulled up. Karen's entire demeanor shifted, her voice softening, a forced smile plastered across her face. 2 officers stepped out, one male, one female. What seems to be the problem? The female officer asked. Karen leapt in before I could speak. Officers, thank goodness. I'm Karen Wilcox, HOA president. I'm conducting official business. This resident is violating community standards with his inappropriate attire. She gestured toward me as though I were indecently exposed. I calmly explained. I asked Ms. Wilcox to leave my property multiple times. She refused. I have the entire interaction recorded. The officers watched the footage, then exchanged a glance. The male officer turned to Karen. Ma'am, regardless of your position with the HOA, you cannot remain on private property once the homeowner asks you to leave. That's trespassing. Karen's face fell, then hardened again. But as HOA president, I have the authority. The HOA does not override state law, the female officer cut in sharply. And HOA bylaws don't override private property rights. Leave immediately. That should have been the end. Any reasonable person would have accepted defeat. But Karen wasn't reasonable. I will not leave until he complies with our standards. This is a violation of Section 12, paragraph. Ma'am, the male officer said more firmly, this is your final warning. Leave now or you will be arrested for trespassing. Karen stared in disbelief. You can't be serious. Do you know who my husband is? The officers exchanged a look. The universal we've got a live one. Ma'am, the female officer said, pulling out handcuffs. Put your phone down and place your hands behind your back. Karen shrieked. What? Well, this is outrageous. I'm the victim here. What followed was both tragic and oddly satisfying. Karen tried to back away, still clutching her precious folder of HOA regulations. The officers moved in, restrained her with professional calm, and began reciting her Miranda rights. Neighbors peeked out from their houses, several filming with their phones. Caught more than a few smirks. This is a mistake. Karen screamed as they walked her toward the cruiser. I'm the HOA president. You can't do this to me. He's the one violating rules. Look at his shirt. The male officer gave me a sympathetic nod once Karen was secured in the back seat. Sir, I apologize for the disturbance. You may need to provide a formal statement later. Of course, I said, still gripping the garden hose like none of this had been real. Thank you, officers. As the cruiser pulled away with Karen still raging inside, I stood in my shorts and sando, phone in one hand, hose in the other, surrounded by neighbors who had just witnessed the fall of Oakwood's self-appointed tyrant. 3 days later, I received confirmation. Karen had been charged with trespassing, harassment, and disorderly conduct. She faced $2,000 in fines and potential community service. The HOA board convened an emergency session and voted to strip her of the presidency pending trial. The real kicker: Karen was a real estate agent. Her arrest, complete with a photo of her being led to the police car, made the local paper. Her broker swiftly placed her on administrative leave. At the preliminary hearing, she spotted me in the courtroom. Her face twisted with rage and humiliation. "You've ruined my life over a stupid shirt," she spat. The judge barely looked up. "Ms. Wilcox, that outburst just cost you another $500 in bail." And with that, Karen Wilcox's reign of terror in Oakwood Estates was over.